Hello, welcome everyone today to this third week of Chennai Storytelling Festival 2025 13th edition. So tonight we journey through stories rich with wisdom, humor and heart. So without wasting any time, let's gear up with our very first storyteller, Ellen Tannenbaum. She is going to tell. She is from USA and she is going to tell the story of the town of Chelm. So I relate with a proverb here: foolishness and wisdom sometimes walk hand in hand. So over to you, Ellen.
Good morning. Well, I guess good evening, everybody. It's morning where I am. Uh, First, I'd like to thank you all for having me and including me. I think this is great. Um, Next, I am going to tell you a couple of stories about a town called Helm. Um, the origins of this story is what I'm going to tell you, but Helm is known for being a town full of fools. All of the fools in the whole world, they're all supposed to live in hell. So back when the world was new and Adam and Eve were just leaving the Garden of Eden, God looked down at the world and he said it was good. It was then that he realized that all of the human beings walking around in all of the nations were going to need souls. So God reached down and he picked up the Big Dipper and he picked up the Little Dipper and he made a batch of souls. The first batch of souls he made were quarrelsome people. They were angry people. They were mean-spirited people. But they needed to exist. And then God made a second batch of souls. And these were peaceful souls. These were loving souls. These were souls to counteract the warriors. And God thought about it and he said, well, he can't put all the angry souls in one place. There'd be nothing but war. There'd be no one to defend, no one to go against that hostility and anger. And in the same respect, he couldn't put all the peaceful souls in one place either. Because then, eventually, they would need to be defended against these warriors who were out of control. So God put all the angry souls in a big glass jar and he gave them to an angel. And he put all the peaceful souls in a second jar and he gave it to a second angel. He told the angels to fly all over the world, sprinkling souls wherever they went. So there would be even numbers of angry souls and peaceful souls all throughout the world in each nation. So the angels went off with their jars and their task, and God looked down and he said it was good. Then he went back to the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper and he made another batch of souls. And this time he made honest souls. Good, strong, spirited people who knew right from wrong and knew which side of it to stay on. But if you're going to have honest souls, you need to have dishonest souls. And so God made yet another batch of souls, and these were dishonest people. They knew there was right, they knew there was wrong, and they chose to be on the side they did. And again, God said, I can't have all of the same kind of people in the same place. It just won't work. So he put the dishonest souls in a glass jar, and he put the honest souls in a glass jar. And he gave each jar to an angel. And he said, now go and spread these souls around the entire world. Make sure you sprinkle some into every nation so that there will be honest souls places and dishonest soul places, and that neither will be able to take advantage of the other because they'll be even. The angels took the jars, they went with their task, spreading souls, and when they returned, God looked down and he said it was good. God went back to the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper for a third time. And this time he made wise souls. People who took logic to a new level. People who could look at a problem and come up with not one solution, but the best solution. And he made a batch of souls who were foolish. And God said, I can't have all of these people together. The wise souls all live in one place. No one will ever understand what they're talking about. They'll just continue their banter back and forth, and it'll accelerate to a point where it won't make sense to anyone but them. And the foolish souls, they can't all be in one place either, because they're going to live a life of folly. And with their life of folly, nothing will ever get accomplished. So God put all the wise souls in a glass jar, and he put all the foolish souls in a glass jar. And he gave each jar to an angel, and he said, spread these out among the world. Make sure you sprinkle them into each nation so that there are wise souls everywhere and foolish souls everywhere. So the angel with the wise soul jar flew off, sprinkling as he went. Wise souls everywhere. However, the angel with the foolish souls in the jar, little bit of a butterfingers. And he did fly off, but he sort of lost control of the jar and dropped it. And the jar fell through the air, landed on the ground, smashed into a million pieces, spilling souls all over the place. Foolish souls all in one place. Well, people will tell you that that's how the town of Chelm came to be. All of the foolish souls that God ever created landing in one spot, living a life of folly, living a life with nothing ever getting accomplished, nothing ever moving forward, sort of a free-for-all. But there's another version of this story. Because if you ask the people in Chelm, they'll tell you that the angel with the butterfingers had the jar of wise souls and dropped the wise souls on the place, which is now the town of Chelm. And that's why nobody understands them. They are such an elite group of minds, full of such amazing wisdom, and people can't understand. They're not fools. They're the wisest of all. The Chelm stories tie hand in hand with Hanukkah stories. So my best example of what it's like to live in Chelm is a Hanukkah story. One night, a group of sages were playing dreidel. Now, we all know dreidel is a Hanukkah game. It's a four-sided top. On each side of the top is a letter. Shin, Hey, Gimel, and Nun. And they represent the words, a great miracle happened there. Dreidel is played around the world. You play with gold coins. You eat jelly donuts. Children play, adults play. In Helm, they're playing. And one of the sages says, stop. We can't continue this game. I've just realized that there are too many letters on the dreidel. What? It's a four-sided top. They're 4 letters. How could there be too many? The shin, he said. The shin means there. It's unnecessary. What do you mean it's unnecessary? Everybody knows that the miracle happened in Israel. The miracle didn't happen in Helm. It happened there. It didn't happen here. If it didn't happen here, it had to have happened there. And therefore, using the word there on a dreidel, it doesn't make any sense. Oh, such wisdom. What a great thing. The men ran off and got some ink, and they blacked out the shin from the dreidel. And they went back to their game. More gold coins, more jelly donuts, and finally somebody says, "Stop! I too have decided that there are too many letters on the dreidel. It's a 4-sided top. We're already down to 3 letters. How could you possibly say that? The hey. It means happened. Well, of course it happened. If it hadn't happened, we wouldn't be having Hanukkah. There's no reason for that letter to be on the dreidel. It's redundant. The brilliance that were coming out of these men all at one sitting was fascinating. He's right. We don't need a hey. We know that the miracle happened. And again, they got the black ink, and again, they blacked out the letter. And they went back to their game. Little time goes by, more jelly donuts, and then somebody yells, "Stop! I think there are too many letters still on the dreidel." Well, we're down to 2. It's a 4-sided top. What do you say? I see the gimel. The gimel means great. We're talking about the Hanukkah miracle. Have you ever, in all of the readings, in all of your history, in all of your lives combined, ever heard of a not great miracle? Have you ever heard of an ordinary miracle? An dull miracle? A passive, unimportant miracle? No. Miracles are great. It's almost by definition. Exactly. And therefore, there's no reason for us to have a gimel on the dreidel. The men agreed. You're right. Miracles are great. And to say that it's great is sort of a waste of time. And they blacked out the gimel. So they went back to their game. And you know what happened a few spins later? Somebody yelled, "Stop! There are too many letters on our dreidel." Oh, please, too many letters. It's a 4-sided top. There's only 1 letter left. I know, and it's a nun, and it doesn't need to be there. It means miracle. Yes. Why doesn't it have to be there? We know the story of Judah Maccabee. We know the story of the army that he and his brothers fought. We know the story of the oil that should have lasted 1 day that lasted 8 nights. We all know that it was a miracle. And to have the dreidel say miracle makes no sense. If the miracle hadn't happened, we wouldn't be celebrating Hanukkah. We wouldn't be here at all. None of the things that have come to be part of our daily lives would be. The miracle is redundant. The men sat around and said, "You're right. Absolutely. For all of the years that people have been playing dreidel, it's amazing that no one has ever come up with any of these theories before. But here we are in one night, in one game, changing all the rules." The men were proud of themselves. They got the ink. They blacked out the nun. And they went back to play. Well, everybody played. Everybody ate. Games went on for years and years and years, and after that, to this day, when Hanukkah comes, you can buy a dreidel and spin your top and play. But you always want to play dreidel in Helm, because in Helm, everybody always wins. Thank you all.
Super.
Thank you.
That was amazing stories, Ellen.
Thank you very
Yes,
much. Thank you for having me. It was fun.
yes. So, anybody wants to question? Are there any questions? So, before we go on to everybody, can I ask the very first question to you?
Sure.
Yes. So, why this story you selected for these two stories for today? What made you select these two stories?
This is a terrible, I will tell you the honest truth. I am a children's storyteller and I
Okay.
tell folk tales. And
Okay.
when I spoke to Eric, we were talking about what I could tell for adults. And at the time, I was getting ready to do Hanukkah stories for the temple.
Okay.
So I said, well, this is what I'm working on now.
Okay.
And I figured it's a little late in the season, but you know, it's a story is a story. And so that's where, Eric and I made the decision that we should tell film stories. So
Yes. That's super. Very nice.
thank you.
Yes, over to audience, please.
One of my favorite instances of foolishness in Jewish culture is from the Marx Brothers. And I know I'm showing how old I am by even mentioning the Marx Brothers. Young people today have, I'm sure, never heard of them, even in the USA. But one of my favorite Marx Brothers, I think his name was Harpo. He never spoke.
Mhm.
He he would squeeze a little honk honk to express something. And he was always smiling, always very optimistic. But then it would turn out to be a disaster. But he would still smile, even though it was a disaster. I think I've internalized that technique.
You do always smile, Eric.
Well, no,
Yes.
but my wife sometimes wonders why are you smiling now? And it's a sort of defense mechanism against disaster. But it's certainly foolish.
Yes. Anybody else?
I loved it. Thank you. It was wonderful. So
Thank
humorous.
you.
Your pacing, your voice, your expressiveness, the repetition, the content of the story. Just what a treat.
Thank you.
Ellen, can you tell us how you play the game? I've never known.
Um, yes. You play the game. Um, there's a value to each letter. So it's kind of like uh, Old Maid, where you're playing, and if you draw that card, you lose, and if you draw another card, you win. Um, Everybody gets a turn around the table, and um, you know, I believe a chin is the winning letter, but you win, you know, the pot of gold coins or whatnot. So I've always played that. Um, Everybody goes around the table, and anyone that gets a shin gets a coin. Although we play with jelly donuts. I'll be fair about it. Uh, I'm sure that there's a real statistical way of playing the game, but I've always played just for fun, and it's not Hanukkah without dreidels
Ellen,
or gold coins.
can I jump in, Ellen?
Sure.
And I'm sure others know, but my understanding is we have Nes, Gadol, Haya, Sham, the Nun, the Gimel, the Hey, and the Shin, and they correspond to that's the great miracle was there, but they correspond to Yiddish words. The Nun means nicht, which is nothing, and that means if you spin the nun, you don't do anything. You don't either take from the pot or put into the pot because everyone has some gold coins or donuts and you put them in the pot. The G, the gadol, means ganze, which means everything. So you take everything out of the pot into yours. The H, the hey, means halbe, which is half. So you take half of what's in the pot. Or the sham, the shin, is I can't remember the Yiddish, but it means to put in. So you put one in. So, I would spin, and then depending on what happens, I would either take all of what's in the pot, I'd take half of what's in the pot, I would do nothing, or I'd put one in. And it keeps going around like that until someone's totally out or until someone gets it all.
We never get
And
past the eating of the donuts.
Looks
Bruce?
like Bruce and Rachel also know.
Hi. Oh, wait a minute. My microphone's a mile away. There we go. Good morning, everybody. At least it's
Hi.
morning where I am. Yeah, we have little rhymes to when we play dreidel, so we can remember. So it's shin shin, put one in. So everybody, these gold coins, by the way, are foil wrapped chocolate coins, typically in my household, anyway.
Mhm.
That we gamble. So it's shin shin, put one in. Everybody puts a coin into the pot, and if the person who spins it gets a gimel, it's gimme. Hay is half, like Barry said, and what's the other one? Noon. Yeah, noon is none. So good way to remember it.
Mm.
Once you know the letters and you know which one is which, of course.
and in my house, we used to play for pennies or raisins or peanuts. It was the cheap version, no jelly donuts. And according to different stories, um, when the Jews were threatened by, say, Roman soldiers or different enemies, they wanted to seem innocent and innocuous, so they played the dreidel game. And that way the soldiers would come by and wouldn't suspect anything. Um, but it's very interesting to hear how different families do it.
Mhm.
The conception of God in the first story is very interesting. The way portrays God as just up there putting some souls in one type of bottle, putting some souls in a different type of bottle, and wondering what to do with the different bottles. I mean, growing up, I always heard, yes, in Jewish culture, we have a very personal relationship with God. We see God in very personal terms. But I mean, I'm from the non-believing wing of the Jewish community. So I find it hard to believe that people can literally believe that there's this father figure up there putting souls in different jars. Do people really literally believe it? None of my business, I know.
Well, that's the power of metaphor.
Yes, that God is a metaphor, but try to tell that to someone who believes in God.
Mhm.
All right, apologies for bringing up these subjects.
That's fine.
No, that's good stuff. We in my synagogue we have a very refreshing rabbi who tells everybody that God is whatever your definition of God is. I've always said for me, God is all the answer to the unanswerable questions. How big is the universe? God. How do we become sentient beings? God. When I was young, I used to say, will I ever be able to afford to buy my own house? Oh, God.
Yes. So shall we move on?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so we have our second storyteller for today.
But we want to thank you, Ellen, very, very much for getting up so early and doing this. Thank you so much.
Oh,
Yes.
not a problem. It was an absolute pleasure. It was neat to be part of. And I will look for the recording and pass it on for everybody who wouldn't get up at 8 o'clock in the morning.
That's so true.
Thank you
So
all.
thank you, Ellen. Thank you so much. Yes. So we'll move on to our next storyteller. That is Diewthy Chandran. She is from Kochi, and she is going to tell the story of Buzo the Sentinel. So here I remember a proverb, Diewthy. I don't know it goes with the story, but loyalty is a language that needs no words. So over to you, Diewthy.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Yes. Eric, thank you very much for giving me yet another opportunity to be a part of this very creative, very active group. I am not a professional storyteller. In fact, I'm an excellent listener. I would call myself an excellent listener. And I had been listening to stories ever since I am born. I was born like when I was a kid, it was my parents and my grandparents and uncles and aunts who narrated stories. A little later, when I was in my teens, my friends used to come up with lots of stories. Then when I got married and I had my son, I was a listener to the stories that my husband had been narrating to my son. And later, when I became a teacher, and continued to be a teacher and head of the school for schools for almost 40 years, then every day you end up hearing lots and lots and lots of stories. Some are real stories, some are stories. So I'm getting an opportunity to tell stories maybe for the last few years. Till that time, I had been a listener. Now, today I'm going to share with you, it's more of a personal experience, which is converted into a story, obviously. Buzo the Sentinel. The incident happened almost 40 years back in a small hamlet in Kulu district in Himachal Pradesh in India. Those of you who do not know much about Himachal Pradesh and Kulu village, it's like nowhere. Nothing much happens there. For people who live in cities, nothing much happens there. Whereas people who are born and brought up there, everything happens there. So this place is called Kasol, a very, very small place. Civilization, as we call it, was far, far away from Kasol. There were a few locals who lived there. They had their humble homes. Then, of course, there is the famous, fast-moving, turbulent Parvati River. And this place, Kasol, is on the banks of Parvati River. Lush green, dense forests. Sun rises pretty late during the day, and sun goes back pretty early. So most part of the day, it is like quite dark. Life is very, very simple there. As I told you, there were very few people. And it's a place quite difficult to reach at that point of time. Tourism was just setting in. Now Kasol is a totally, totally different place, 40 years. Now, when you look back, Kasol is considered one of the one of the prime location for people to go and camp and have fun. But it was quite different 40 years back. And I'm talking about those days when there was electricity. I should say there was electricity, but it was like not even good enough to light a 0-watt bulb. And if the power goes, it will take 3 days, 4 days for people to come and check it and correct it and people to get back power. So every home, they had their oil lamps. Still, people lived there very, very happily. The locals had some, what can I say? Maybe they grew some millets and their vegetables and fruits and whatever they required. And of course, Parvati River was always kind enough to give them Himalayan trouts in plenty. See, if you and I go and try to fish, you will come back with nothing. But the locals, even the kids, had their way of going and getting this fish almost every day. And that was part of their main meals every day. And Kasol is quite close, maybe just a few kilometers from the very famous place called Manikaran. Manikaran was famous for, there was a Gurudwara there and hot water springs. Plenty of them. Even Kasol was blessed with a few small hot water springs. And our friend Teji, who invited us to his place, he also had a very small hot water spring in his property. He also had, apart from his very humble home, which is a 3-bedroom house, very simple homes, they also had these little huts. I don't know whether we should call them huts. They were just single small rooms with 2 ventilators, a fireplace and a chimney for the smoke to go, a bed and a mattress. There were no modern toilets. There were no modern bathrooms. And the locals and the guests who went there, they were least bothered or embarrassed about having a bath in the open. That simple was the life in Kasol. And who actually went to Kasol? It was basically people from big cities who really wanted to have a break from their stressful, very busy, very sophisticated life. So people who just wanted to do nothing, absolutely nothing, relax, eat, sleep, get up and go for trekking, come back again, eat, sleep, do nothing. Those were the people who went to Kasol those days. Yes, of course, there is Kirganga, which is a very, very difficult trekking spot. But then one has to be really prepared to go to Kirganga. Otherwise, it is like there are small places where you could go, a 3-hour, 4-hour trek. So when Teji Bhai invited us to go to his place, he invited us, he said, come over and chill out. That's what he told us. Okay, you wondering, what is Buzo doing in Kasol? Buzo is the hero of the story. So he has to have a place here. Yes, Buzo is a Gaddi breed dog. As the story goes, he wandered into Teji Bai's dining room one fine morning when he was just maybe 8 or 9 days old. And before they realized, he became a part of the family. And then he became the master of the family. All this happened when they were all wondering what to do with this very mischievous, happy young dog. When I said he was the master, he was the father, he was the mother, he was the mother-in-law, he was the grandmother. Whatever role the person can take in her life, all that Buzo did. A very happy family. Now, how did Buzo get this name? I'm sure you all have guessed it. Buzo boozed out every night. Even that was an accident. Again, as the story goes, Teji's children shared the story with us. It was like one day evening, Teji has this habit of sitting with his friends and having a drink or two. So by mistake, Buzo spilled a glass. And again, by mistake, he licked whatever fell on the floor. And again, by mistake, he loved it. So then what I understand is that he tried to spill more. And Teji reached a stage where Teji said, no, you can't keep on breaking glasses and you can't keep on drinking full glasses. So he was offered a bowl and Buzo got his share of booze. And it so happened that he was the only one in the group who got cocktails because everyone who was drinking, who was his admirer, gave him a share. So Buzo was happily drunk by the end of the day. But that doesn't mean that he was a drunkard and after that he became a zombie. He was a very typical Gaddi breed dog with all the characteristics of a Gaddi breed. He was affectionate, he was courageous, he was gentle, he was independent, he was intelligent, he was playful, he was loyal, he was stubborn, and he was territorial. A good combination for a guard dog. And Buzo was to Teji Bhai like a guard dog who always followed him whenever he had to go out. Then he also looked after the farm and checked all those trespassers and made sure that the workers are working properly. To Bully Behan, who is Teji's wife, he was like a protector of the whole family. So Bully believed that if Buzo is around, everything is going to happen fine and Buzo will take care of the whole family. Now Chetan, who is the 7-year-old son, who is the same age as my son Hari, to Chetan, he was a partner in crime. To Mala, their 5-year-old daughter, he was a stepbrother who always took care of her and protected her from her mischievous brother, Chetan. Now, their 3-year-old daughter, Priya, was always in a state of confusion because there are times when Buzo is very affectionate, very friendly. And the next moment, Buzo becomes very mischievous, very troublesome. So Priya didn't know where to put him in her life. Sometimes she wanted him. Sometimes she didn't want him. So that was Buzo. And this is a 6-member family. As I said, a very happy family, which invited us to be with them. We were living in Delhi at that point of time. And we got into our sunflower yellow Fiat car. Maybe some other time I might talk about our sunflower yellow Fiat car and how special it was to everyone in Delhi. But he was a very, very faithful companion and traveled with us on many of our adventurous trips. So we traveled in that Fiat car. And before we reached Teji's house, Teji had given us a little warning. Teji said, Buzo, being the master of the house, will have to screen and scan people. And only if Buzo allows, approves, agrees, then only we can stay in Teji's accommodation. Otherwise, he said, don't worry. If he doesn't approve of you people, then I will still find a place for you, which is as good as mine. But we actually wanted to be with Teji and his family. And we had our trump card with us, our dear son, who is the same age as Teji's son, Chetan. Now, our son had this habit of bringing in abandoned puppies and kittens. God only knows from where he picks them up, bring them home, and then feed them and take care of them. Of course, I never allowed them inside the house, so it was always outside the gate. So I knew that, he had this affinity for animals and he might help us. So we reached Teji's house. Husband and I, we sat in the car and we sent our son out because the scanning test will have to happen. So all of us outside Teji's family waiting, all cross fingers. We are sitting in the car, little tense. Hari got out. And even before we started worrying about what is going to happen, the scene that we saw was all 4 kids were running after Buzo, and Buzo was leading them to the Parvati River. So that means, yes, we won the scanning test, and we are part of the family. That was a good news for us. I think after that, I saw while we were staying in Kasol, we might have seen Hari in glimpses because he was always with the other kids, bathing, sleeping, eating, fighting, everything. Yes. Now, the routine in the Teji family was like, since it was a holiday, we were allowed to get up at our own convenience. We get a plate. We have the hot masala chai, which Bully makes. Bully is an exceptional host, lovely cook, takes care of us very well. So we have this tea, then we have our breakfast, then we go for this trekking and come back, eat, sleep, again get up, have our chai, and the men will go out for walks. And that is when I sit with Bully in the kitchen and she will keep on replenishing my masala chai. And that was when we were bonding. The usual women talk. I told her about my past, my family, where I grew up, my village, my parents, my school, my college, my job, what all I did till that time. And Bully also told me about her life. Her village was much more uncivilized than Kasol, a remote village. They did have a school, but then girls hardly went to school. Even boys, that was not their first priority anyway. So Bully might have attended school for a couple of years. After that, all girls were sort of being prepared, brought up to be married and looking after their families. And that was the done thing in the village, and no one felt offended about it because that was what was happening for ages, for generations. Now, Bully came along when she grew up. Her life was interwoven with the folklores and the stories and the myths that were all rather happening in that village. And that had a great influence on her as a person. She believed all that, and they had reasons to believe these also. Because, much later, I came to know that this Kulu Valley, or rather Parvati Valley, was known as a place for disappearance of missing people. It's a valley of death, valley of shadows. Now, all these were part of the folklores and myths, which became a part of their life. So even though Teji's family was a more progressive environment, Bully always carried with her whatever she picked up from her home, her village in the childhood. And Teji was not really bothered about it. Teji didn't want to change her. He said it doesn't make any difference in our life. She is a good mother. She brings up her children very well, and we don't have a problem. So let her believe in whatever she does. So one day, one evening, like after our dinner, husband and I decided to go and sit on the waterfront because these houses and huts are on the waterfront of Parvati River. It was dark because it was maybe a couple of days before the Amavasya, that is the new moon. So it was quite dark, but it was okay. There was ambient light and both of us went and sat there. And there are these, even though Parvati River is very boisterous and very turbulent, there is this mesmerizing calm that we can still see in Parvati River. So we went and sat at a convenient place, where we can dip our feet once in a while. It was freezing water, but still we could do that. So the two of us went and sat there, generally sitting there and enjoying the fast-moving river and also the mesmerizing calm. Now, of course, Buzo being our guard, he has to come. He was very playful, very happy. So Buzo also came and sat near us, happily sitting there. But every 5 minutes, 10 minutes, Buzo will get up and go to the main house, make sure that everyone is safe there. Buzo will come back and again sit with us. And I think we kept on sitting for an hour, 2 hours, we don't know. And he also happily joined us. And when we decided to go back, yes, Buzo got up. He stood in front of us and then he led us to our hut, our room. And he made sure that we got into the room and we put the latch and locked the door, and then only Buzo left. Because he knew that it is his responsibility to make sure that we are safe in our room. That was just the beginning of our vacation, our week-long vacation with him. A couple of days after this, again, we wanted to go to the riverfront after dinner. And I told Bully that we will be going and sitting there for a while. But Bully seemed very unhappy about it. And she told me, Diewthy, don't go tonight because it is Amavasya night, it's new moon night. It is extremely dark and it's not safe for you to go there. But then you are young and you want to prove that, oh, darkness, it doesn't really bother us. Anyway, I told her that, Bully, don't worry. We will be just sitting there for 10, 15 minutes and after that we will be going back. Anyway, she was not at all happy that we decided to go. We went. It was, yes, she was right. It was actually difficult because we were not carrying our torches with us. It was difficult for us to go and sit there. But then we went and sat there. Of course, Buzo was there with us. Buzo came. He also sort of was hanging around with us. Once in a while, when there is a night bird passing by, he has to show to the bird that, he is his presence, his leadership. So he will bark and then after that, he will come back, sit with us. He will go back to the main house. He will come back. Then suddenly I noticed that when he started running to the house and suddenly he turned back and he came back. He came back and stood next to us, looked into the darkness. And then I could see that his face changed, like he was a little angry. He was not very aggressive. He stiffened his body and he was breathing a little heavily. And then what he did was, he just stood there, and then we looked into that direction. It was dark and we couldn't see anything. And immediately he went back, then he came back. He was not leaving us. Again, he started growling deeply, barking aggressively, and staring into darkness intensely. I looked at my husband, he wasn't least bothered about it. But I told him, see, come, let's go. It's not helping us. And both of us, we got up. We were not actually willing to, but then we got up. And then we noticed that Buso was literally making a circle around us when we were getting into our hut. Buso made sure that we got into the hut. Both of us got in, and then we locked the door. And Buso went running to the house, the main house. I just couldn't sleep. I was feeling very, very disturbed, uncomfortable. I felt that no, things are not going on fine. I couldn't sleep the whole night. When I looked at my husband, he was sleeping peacefully. Then I think maybe after a couple of hours, I was like dozing off. And that was when we heard this knock on the door. And it was Teji who was calling out my husband. And he told him, hi, friend, come out, let's go for a walk. And I opened my eyes and I could see that my husband is all dressed up and ready to go, as if he already knew that he has to go out. He took the torch and both of them got out. And when he got out, he didn't tell me anything other than he said, close the door and don't open it till the sun comes out. That was enough for me to be scared again. I couldn't sleep a wink. I waited for the light to come in Teji Bhai's kitchen. I said, no, I can't sleep. Something uncomfortable is happening. I waited, I don't know how long. Anyway, when I saw light in Guli's house, I forgot that my husband has told me not to open the door. It was still dark, but I didn't bother. I opened the door. I ran to the main house. I went there. Guli was quite natural. You know, she was not surprised at all. She asked me, can I make a cup of tea for you? She made a cup of tea for me. And while I was having my tea, I sat there and I told her what all happened the night before. Believe me, the dagger look that she gave me. She said, I told you yesterday not to go out. I told you it is Amavasya day. I told you something will happen. And see, now what you have done. The men will come back after a couple of hours and they will tell us stories about someone who has died somewhere, a body floating in Parvati River. My God, I was totally confused just because we went and sat there for a while. Am I responsible for something really nasty happening there? When she calmed down, she told me, Diewthy, I'm so sorry. But then, you know, I remembered all the Chudail stories, all the ghost stories. And I know what exactly happened. Anyway, I was feeling miserable, sitting there, waiting for the men to come. I went and looked at the children. They were all sleeping happily. When the men came, yes, the sun had already come out. But I noticed that the men did not come inside the house. They waited outside and he called out, Teji called out. He told me, Diewthy, please come out. Let's show you something. So we walked to the place where we were sitting the night before. And can you believe? Just 3-4 feet away from where we were sitting, there were n number of pug marks. Pug marks not of one leopard, 2 leopards. And my God, it was a very close save for both of us. And later we came to know that obviously Buzo was the protector. Buzo was the one who saved us from there. But later we came to know that these leopards had lifted 2 sheep from their neighbor's farm and went away. I went pale. I don't know, I was shivering. I thought I will faint then. And my husband came and held my hand. He said, everything is all right now. Now, the last challenge for me was to go inside the house and face Bully. Bully who never will believe the story that I am going to tell her. Because Bully strongly believed that someone was killed, and it was the Chudain who killed. Now, people who know Himachal and the stories about Himachal, they know that these are folklores which had great, great influence on generations after generation. But we went to Kasol on many more occasions, but the first one was a memorable one. Anyway, I decided that I will give Buzo a large peg in the evening, because that was my offering to him for protecting the whole family. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Diewthy. This was a very amazing story. So my one question to you will be, like, of course, the whole story of Buzo was very, very touching. And do you think that animal often teaches more about love and devotion than humans do? Like,
See, what I believe is that what they give is unconditional. That is the difference between humans and animals. I think that explains everything.
yes, yes, absolutely. Super, super. Anybody else would like to ask anything? Okay, so let's move on to our next set of storytellers. That is Jaishree. So Jaishree is from Delhi, and she is going to tell the story about silent strings. So some emotions are never spoken, yet always understood. Jaishree, over to you.
Namaskar, good evening, and people who have joined in from other countries, maybe it's good morning for them. So, greetings to all, and I'm delighted and grateful to be on this platform. And the best thing is that we get to hear diverse perspectives, varied narratives in one go, connecting with so many storytellers. So, kudos to the whole team, and grateful to Eric, Sheetal, Pratigya for giving me a chance to be here and tell a story. So, the story that I've got today is one of my favorite stories. It's about um, the fleeting nature of human emotions and quiet beauty of unspoken and unrequited love. The story is penned by O. Henry. Again, he's one of my favorite authors. And the best thing about O. Henry, his writings, is the climax. When we hear a story or read a story, we guess, we predict what's going to happen next. But in O. Henry's story, when you reach the climax and you reach the end, it is so unpredictable, and the expression that you get is, ah, I never thought of this. Oh, really? Yes. So that is something that gives me a kick. And when I tell this story on various platforms, it changes because the story never remains the same. It changes with the audience. So on Valentine's Day, love is the theme of my story. So let's begin. So this story is about Miss Martha. She runs a little bakery on a street corner, and imagine this bakery where you go 3 steps up and there's this bell hanging overhead, and when you push the door, it tinkles, it rings. And Miss Martha is 40 years old. She's neither rich nor poor. She has got 2 false teeth, golden color, maybe solid gold, and she has got $2,000 in her bank account. She is not married, she's single. And as I told you, she's 40 years old. Women or people, her friends around, all are married, though they had much less chances to do so. But Miss Martha is very hopeful. She's very positive. And her life is mundane. Like she goes, she sits there, and there are various delicacies in the showcase. People come and people go. Now, for last 2-3 weeks, a customer has got her attention. He is tall and middle-aged. He has got neatly trimmed beard, salt and pepper look, wears specs, and he speaks English with a strong German accent. So Miss Martha has taken a liking towards him. The clothes that he wears are mostly wrinkled, they are baggy, they're not ironed, but still he looks neat. And whenever he came to the bakery, he always ordered 2 loaves of stale bread. Now, the fresh bread was 5 cents a loaf, and the stale bread was like 2 for 5. So he always ordered a stale bread. He never ordered a fresh bread. And Miss Martha wondered why he does so. Is he too poor to afford a fresh bread? And once this customer, when he was paying for 2 loaves of stale bread, Miss Martha noticed brown and red stains on his nails. And she thinks to herself, he must be a painter, a poor painter who lives on a terrace house where he has an easel. On his easel, there's a painting, and he has got meager income. And with that income, he buys 2 loaves of stale bread and must be eating those 2 loaves of stale bread with water. So just to check whether he was a painter or not, what she does, she picks a painting that she had bought from a sale, and she hangs it right behind the counter where she sat. So after 2 days, this customer comes and he places a nickels on the showcase and orders for 2 loaves of stale bread. And while Miss Martha bends and pulls stale bread, and she's wrapping that bread in a piece of paper, this customer notices that painting and he says, "That's a nice painting, madame." And now Miss Martha, she smiles. Ah, I was right. And hiding her cunningness, she gets up and she says, yeah, I like good art in artists. So do you think it's a good painting? And at that customer says, it's good, but the perspective is not true in the painting, madame. Good morning. And he rushes off. So now Miss Martha is happy. Why? Because her smartness paid off. Now she knows that he's a painter, and she tested her theory also. But still, her heart aches at the thought of him eating stale bread every evening or for lunch. So whenever she sits in the evening to sip her tea, she has got chops, she has got pies, tarts, cakes in front of her. And when she takes a bite from a tart, she wonders, what about that painter? I wish I could do something for him. What is the use of my bank balance? What is the use of this bakery? when it cannot help an artist like him. But if I offer him help, he'll be offended. What shall I do? So now she starts to daydream. Since the ice was broken, every now and then, after every 2 days, this customer comes who is supposed to be a painter, buys two loaves of stale bread, and they have a nice chit chat across the counter, and then he leaves. So she daydreams about him. And now she also notices that he is seemingly looking thin. And again, she wonders, ah, he has got meager income. I wish I could give him something nice to eat. I bake so many things. Now, since she's noticing him, she's also observing her appearance. And normally she would wear a brown color dress. Then she went in her house, opened the cupboard, and she pulled out a polka dot blue waist. And then again, in her kitchen, she cooked some face pack that was supposed to improve her complexion. Now she would get ready, she would smile at herself when she looked herself in the mirror, and would sit at the counter and wait for this customer to come and ask for 2 loaves of stale bread. So days went by. This customer again visited her, and he asked her, 2 loaves of stale bread, if you please. And while Miss Martha was pulling that bread out of the shelf, a fire engine ran past the bakery, and it rang. The sound was loud and jarring. So, as a natural instinct, this painter looked back, ran towards the door to see if everything was okay, because it was a fire engine. And this was the time, this was an opportunity that Miss Martha seized. What she did, in the shelf, she saw a big pound of butter that the dairyman had delivered 10 minutes ago. She took a big fistful of that and she inserted it within the stale bread. She had a big knife, she slashed the big bread and she inserted that butter in it, and then she wrapped it in a piece of paper. And by the time he turned around, she was ready. And then she gave that packet to him. He said bye. She said bye. And then she had a smile on her face. She felt a little proud on her smartness. Oh, see. So that evening, the whole day actually, she dwelt on that thought. Oh, I'm so smart. What if how would he react when he would find my deception, little deception? Will he see me in a bad light? Then he again crushed that thought by saying, no, edibles have no language, and that butter will not present me in a bad light, or I'm not a forward woman. He would like it. So when she was sipping her tea, she was thinking, she was imagining that scene, that when this painter would put his brush and palette down, and he would stand in front of his painting that would be beyond any critique, and he would sit and relax, and then he would take that stale bread, dry bread, he would bite into it, and the butter will melt into his mouth, and he would think about those hands that placed that butter in those loaves of bread, and she blushed. Just then, the door was pushed open, and the bell that was hanging atop rang, and 2 young men entered. One of them was smoking a pipe, and she had never seen that man before. But the other man, he was the same man who was supposedly from German descent, and he was very angry. He was furious. He was abusing her in German, Tausend fair, something to that effect. That's what she could make out, and he was pounding, punching the counter where Miss Martha was sitting. She could not fathom, she could not understand what was happening. Why was he so angry? Whereas she was thinking the opposite, that this man would be happy because I had thought of him and I had cared of him and I had gifted him something really nice. Whereas the other man, the young man, he was trying to calm him down, and after much noise, the other friend of this German man, he dragged him out and made him stand outside the shop, and where this man was fuming in anger. Again, now this friend came inside, and Miss Martha was speechless, sitting there as if she had seen a ghost. She didn't know how to respond or react. And this friend of his comes there and tells her, Madam, I believe you should know the fact. This man, the customer who usually comes to your bakery, and every time he comes, he only takes 2 loaves of stale dry bread from you, is actually a draftsman, and he works at an architectural firm. I work with him in the office. For last 3 months, he has been working on a painting on a map. He's making a sketch for a new town hall, and this was for a prize competition. He had to send his entry. And you know what? When draftsmen make their designs, they first make them using a pencil, and then they ink the lines, and then they use the dry bread to rub those line marks because they are better than Indian rubbers. But today, he had inked his lines last night, but when he today used the bread bought from your bakery, and when he rubbed that bread on those lines, everything was lost. Now that design is good for nothing. That could only be used for packing your sandwiches. And he leaves. Now Miss Martha doesn't know what to say. She had developed a link. She had nurtured a feeling for this man, and now it had landed her there. She immediately got up, went inside. In her room, she took off her blue polka dot nice waist. She took it off and again wore that brown, boring dress of hers, washed her face, and the homemade cream bag that she had made, she threw it out the window, wiped her tears, and again came back and sat at the counter. Thank you.
Superb, superb, superb. Amazing, amazing story, Jaishree. Yes.
But one of my favorite stories, and I think on Valentine's Day, I found it apt because love is not always about what you say, expressing.
Yes.
And the deepest emotions are mostly unexpressed. They stay in your heart, and they remain there as a good memory. So thank you for the opportunity. I could share it here.
Yes, thank you so much. So, your story made the silences feel so powerful, you know.
Thank you.
So, yes, you already told why you chose this story, right? Because, yes, it was very much connected to the Valentine's Day, and it was so well told.
Thank you.
Yes, anybody from the audience? Yes, Vicky Ness, please.
You know, I love that author, and you're right. He creates those aha moments that go right to the heart, and you delivered that perfectly. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes. Anybody else?
I believe
Yes,
I was well
Rachel.
within time. I didn't take much time.
No, no, you are perfect. Don't worry. Yes, Rachel, you would like to say something.
Yes. Oh, that was so wonderful. Your setup was perfect. Your expressions were just so meaningful. I felt like I was there in the bakery, inside the woman's mind and her heart. And I just completely was swept along with her fantasy. And then afterwards, the shock and the letdown. And when you said that, oh, Henry makes you say, oh my goodness, it was so unexpected. And you told it just wonderfully. It was so poignant. Thank you very much.
So true. Yes. Yes, June Brown, please go ahead.
Well, I love the story. I love the expression, but I was actually in shock at the end. I was waiting for it to go on. I couldn't believe it was over. I felt so sorry for the woman who had given up everything, taking off her makeup, putting on the old dress. I thought, try again, try again. But you told it so well, I could actually see that butter smearing that map, that greasy stain. So thank you for the story. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Jaishree, thank you for taking out time from your busy schedule to tell us the
Always a pleasure.
story.
It's always a pleasure, my good fortune that I get to come here. Not only tell, I get to hear so many stories.
Yes,
Oh, it's my privilege.
absolutely. Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So let's go on to our last teller for the day, Vicky Ness from USA. So her story is Spirits of the Past, Spirits of the Future. So the true miracle is living in the present. Vicky Ness, over to you, please.
Good morning. Actually, it's nighttime there. It's morning here, and it's still
Absolutely fine. Yes.
dark out. It was a freezing cold, frigid night, and a hill stood out against the dark night sky, hard as iron and black against the sky. Quiet, so still that it seemed as if the earth was holding its breath. Oh my, it's the perfect time for the spirits of the past and the spirits of the future to rise up and play. You see, the spirits of the past and the spirits of the future are around us all the time, but we don't see them. It's only when we're not around that they rise up, become visible, and they play. Now, the spirits of the past are rather childlike. Oh, they have such a good time. Chained as they are to that location, they nevertheless remember every single thing that happened there. And they replay it in sound and sight. And so, for example, a musket shot right across that hillside 200 years ago, it rang out again, but just in a flash of scarlet. And here, an old cart that rumbled up the hill years and years ago appeared in a grumble of gray rumbling up. And chickens that were on that very hillside just 2 days ago, pecking at this and that. Oh, yes, those sounds were accompanied by honeycomb yellow dots disappearing. And lovers who once planned to elope up on that very hill, their whispers carried up like a fog of neon lavender foxfire. See, this is how the spirits of the past amuse themselves. The spirits of the future, on the other hand, are much more sophisticated. They waft up like a little bit of smoke above all that cacophony of the past. They are concerned with the dreams of what might could be. And so, for example, there was a young man in town who dreamed of putting a mansion on top of that very hill. And so the spirits of the future arranged themselves into twinkling lights and hazy pulsing brightness, illuminating a dream castle, with turrets and a beautiful garden in front. And oh, but that young man, he was expecting to inherit more money than he actually did. And so therefore, yeah, well, it would never be built. And so the spirits of the future allowed their lights to dim and disappear in the dark. Oh. But wait, there was a man who wanted to build a shopping mall on top of that hill. Oh, he could see it, would put that town on the map. That's what they needed. And so the spirits of the future got busy creating squares of lights with a sign that came up that twinkled in lights that said Hilltop Mall. Oh, it would be grand. Yeah, but the city council had to tell him that that area was not zoned for retail, and so it wasn't going to happen. Oh, and so all the lights of the future dissolved like so much sugar stirred into black coffee, leaving a sweet feeling, but nothing. And so they amused themselves until that very night, you see, they saw something coming up the hill. Oh my goodness, it was lumbering and lurching. It was misshapen and odd looking, and it came up the hill. And so the spirits of the past and the spirits of the future disappeared back into their netherworld and watched. And the creature lumbered up higher and higher in that frozen night to the very top of the frozen hill and sat itself down and then removed the hood of a parka, revealing a living 13-year-old girl. Oh my goodness, she was shivering in the cold. She had on her flannel pajamas. She had on her bathrobe. She had on a huge sweater of her mama's and an enormous jacket of her daddy's with the hood up. She had a scarf around her neck and her thick fuzzy slippers, and she was still freezing. But she wanted to sit up here so she could say what she wanted to say without anybody saying anything back to her. So she looked out into the darkness and the silence of the universe. And she said, I hate him. He's stupid. He said he was going to text me and he didn't. Why did he do that? He said he loved me. And why didn't he text me? He's rude. That's what's wrong with him. He's rude. I hate him. And then the more she thought about it, the more she started to cry because maybe she wasn't pretty enough. She was never going to be pretty enough. Nobody was ever going to love her because she wasn't ever going to be pretty enough. At 13, she knew this to be true. And her heart broke open. And the heart inside her heart broke open. And the little heart inside the heart broke open. And tears flooded down her frozen cheeks. And she cried out to the impassive universe. And when she had finally expended all her tears, she wiped her eyes and her nose, and she looked around herself all alone on that stupid hill, shaking with cold. And she looked down at the town, right down at the bottom of the hill. And, well, there were lights on. Over there was the Collinses. Their baby has colic. They're up all night. Poor people. And that flashing light, that's the radio station. And that one there, that's Howard's garage. Oh, he's inventing something. He thinks he's an inventor, but he's stupid. He doesn't know how to invent. Everything he comes up with is weird. Oh, he's up there inventing now. Oh, that's super. I'm glad I'm not weird, she thought to herself. And she looked around herself at the sky. Now, the night sky without a moon. All the stars came out sprinkling in their nighttime finest, the cobalts, the ruby reds, and the diamond brights, stars, beyond stars, forever. And her little teenage heart opened and expanded in awe and joy. Oh, it was the most beautiful thing maybe she had ever seen. But the more she looked, the more she thought, you know what they look like? They look like cell phone lights at concerts. She was going to be a star, she could sing. Her grandma could sing. Her mother couldn't sing very well, but she could sing. She was going to be a star one day. And all those lights, that's what it was going to look like. People moving their flashlight cameras in beat to her very heart as she sang. That's what it was going to be like. All those lights just for her. And so she opened her mouth to belt out her big song. Oh, but her throat closed up in the frigid cold, and her nose was running, and she couldn't sing. Oh, everything's wrong. And she sat all by herself up in this terrible, cold, dark hill, looking like an idiot, shivering violently through all the layers that she had piled on. And then she thought to herself, there was a piece of pie left after dinner. And if her brother hadn't seen it, why, it might still be on the counter in the kitchen. And she could have that. Wouldn't that be good? And she could put it in the microwave and it would warm up. Oh, that would be really good. Yeah. Oh, a piece of pie. Oh, that sounds really good. She was really hungry now. So she got herself up very clumsily in all her layers and put her parka hood on and started to feel her way down the hill in the darkness. Ouch! Ooh, down, down, down in the darkness toward a little butter yellow window, the only light she had left on in the house, which came from the kitchen. Down, slipping, no, feeling her way down, hoping that none of her family was awake and would ask her, "Is everything all right?" Of course it's not right. Nothing is ever right, ever again. But that pie sure would be good. And so down she felt her way in the dark, trusting that she would find her way. And behind her, the spirits of the past and the spirits of the future reappeared on top of that hill and looked wistfully down at her body going down the hill. And then they did what the spirits of the past and the spirits of the future always do in the presence of such a magical, miraculous being. They bowed down in homage to that most precious of all beings, those who are living in the here and now, looking for love and trying to understand. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this wonderful story. Yes. So, your story actually beautifully captured the essence of time. The true miracle is, living in the present, So, how do you think storytelling helps us stay rooted in the present? Vicky Ness, can you tell me that?
Well, I think that we tend to live, if we're not careful, in the past and in the future. And stories make us feel that we are here now, listening, aware, right here, right now. And we always wind up, I do, with a little humility for the courage just to be alive here and now, feeling what we feel, going through time as we do right now.
Yes. Super, super. Yes, any questions from the audience, please? Yes, Jaishree, tell me, please.
It's not a question, it's just that I must congratulate you, Vicky. It was amazing to watch you while you were telling. You were deeply involved in your story, and there was a moment when you were emoting. I could see a tear here or there. So I could feel connected to you and the characters of your story. So thank you so much.
Hello.
Yes, yes, Rajesh, please.
Yeah, I wanted to add similar things. Vicky, I mean, the way you were telling stories, it felt like, somebody who experienced something like that, and they are so there. So, and all that era, all that time you were creating, and you were immersed in it. And it didn't remain just a story, but you were telling your experience, or somebody close one who has experienced that, so that thing, and it felt so we couldn't take eyes off. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Vicky Ness, for this beautiful story. Eric, do you want to add anything?
June has her hand up.
Yes, yes,
Yes,
June.
Vicky, did you write that story?
Yes, I write all my stories.
Oh,
Wow,
it was
that's
amazing.
superb.
I just
Yes.
was with you all the way, and your expression and your timing, and that I felt for that 13-year-old girl. And then the humor with the pie was just a nice counterpoint to the story. Thank you so much.
Let's try to come in. Yes, Eric. Shall
Well,
we
just
wind up?
wonderful storytelling.
Yes.
Totally, as people have said, totally engaging.
Yes. So it was a very mesmerizing evening. Each story was a reflection of life itself. Some made us think, some made us feel, and all of them left us more richer, isn't it? So thank you, all brilliant storytellers and our wonderful audience. We will see you tomorrow in the afternoon for the next session. Thank you all for being here today.
And thank you, Sheetal, for hosting.
Yes.
Wonderful job.
Thank you, Eric.
Did Rachel, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. I wanted to also compliment Vicky. It was so real. You captured the drama of that young girl when you said her heart and the heart inside and the little heart inside of that broke open. And then when she saw that beauty that was so awe-inspiring and maybe the most beautiful thing she had ever seen, that is the way teenagers are, from one extreme to another, from the deepest depths to the highest highs, and how she projected herself in the future about being an actress and a star, but because it was so cold she couldn't sing, all of a sudden that made her feel like she would never be able to perform. And then the bouncing back to reality, well, I'm going to go get that pie if my brother hasn't had it. It was absolutely wonderful. So it was just such a meaningful story to me, the way you closed the spirits of the past and the spirits of the future. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, Sheetal. Thank you, everyone.